All right, welcome everybody. My name is Allan Isfan, and I am Director of Business Development for You.i TV. As a way to introduce myself, quick little story. So 2 years ago, I actually started at You.i TV exactly 2 years ago, and this was the first event that I'd been to with our team. And when I looked out the balcony, that day was actually sunny, and I decided I was going to move to California from Ottawa, Canada, where our team is, about 200 people. Just slightly less than 2 years later, made it happen, moved to LA, and just super excited to be able to just drive to this panel and have this discussion with everybody. You know, the panel that we put together is really the beginning of trying to solve some really big challenges for not just viewers, but media companies and people that are trying to develop apps in the video world. The fragmentation is absolutely incredible. When we started with mobile, I'm from Canada, so BlackBerry was a big deal. Little by little, we got to 2 platforms, and that certainly made things a lot easier for people that are trying to develop content to reach people. In the connected TV space, we are very, very far from that. Obviously, we have mobile still, with Android that's really fragmented. We have consoles. We got PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One. The Switch that just came out now. We got smart TVs, we got set-top boxes. It's an incredible challenge to deal with. And on top of that, we got HLS and Dash and DRM challenges. So it is just a big, big challenge, and we're going to try to attack that today. So to help us do that, I really brought together a real fun and exciting mix of people that are right in the thick of it. Ted Cittadine, who you see on that list from Roku, he is on his way, so hopefully he's going to be able to join us. But I'm really thrilled to have a mix of media and app development, and then hopefully if Ted makes it here, one of the leading platforms. So with that, I'd like to introduce the panel, and in fact, I'll let them introduce themselves. Maybe we'll start with Tom at the end, and then we'll get going.
Hi, my name is Tom Schaeffer. I'm the CEO of Float Left Interactive, and for the past 8 years, Float Left's been in the trenches, as Allan's pointed out, helping brands deploy TV apps on all of the major platforms. So we're focused on the TV experience. We believe that the app itself, the TV app, is the last mile. There's a lot of work that goes into creating content and producing, acquiring content, building this technology stack, and then to deliver that in an inferior or a substandard way to a consumer is just a crime in our minds, right? So we're focused on, again, creating great TV experiences and through TV apps, and we're a software company. We're kind of morphing into a technology company. We're trying to solve the fragmentation problems that Allan has mentioned. So thanks for listening.
I'm Kimberly Hicks. I am VP of Digital Media for Disney Channels Worldwide. I've been there 1 year this month. Also moved from colder weather to LA. So I was in New York with Viacom before that. At Disney Channels, I manage the product team who develops our apps. So we just launched the Disney Channel Disney Now app, which combines Disney Channel, XD, and Disney Junior into a single app experience that I think is very magical and very fun. We also handle games and interactive on my team as well. So we work very closely with our content management teams, content development, programming, marketing, to figure out how to make some very cool interactive experiences for our audience. Previous to that, I was at Viacom, where I was responsible for TV Everywhere, personalization, and identification. And previous to that, I was at Turner, where I started on mobile. So I worked on the first CNN iPhone app and worked on the first team that developed TV Everywhere.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karina Kogan. I'm the SVP of Digital Media and Products at TBS and TNT, so at Turner. I've been with the company less than a year, and I oversee product development, so all of our TVE products, as well as digital audience development, including sort of social media strategy, and all of our DR, so all of our direct marketing, all of our sort of cost per performance advertising that's designed to drive cost-effective app downloads. And then I also oversee all of our digital content production that's original to digital, so mostly short-form content.
So quite a panel. Let's get started with a little bit more one-on-one questions, and then we'll kind of delve into more of a panel discussion. Having moved here, I had to figure out what platform to use in our own home, and funny enough, where we live, Time Warner Cable is the provider, and the set-top box just wouldn't connect. And of course, being the platform guy at UI TV, I had a box full of devices, and I hooked up a Roku to my TV, downloaded the Spectrum app, and boom, we were up and running. We have a mix of things at home. Obviously, I have a box full, so I'm constantly testing. But I'm kind of wondering, from your own habits, what are you using across your home in your main TV, bedroom? What are the habits there?
Well, we have DirecTV, and I have a Chromecast and a Roku and an Apple TV. As a matter of fact, I have a Fire at the office as well. So I have all of them. The remote control situation is really unpleasant. And all the HDMI inputs are equally unpleasant. But yeah, I use them all. And but at the end of the day, I hate to say this, and we're videotaping it, but whatever. I'll be honest, I do watch a lot of Netflix. So, as a consumer.
I also have all devices between home and office, but at home I use my DVR through DirecTV quite a bit for anything current. And then I have a Fire TV, which I really like the interaction and the experience there for things like Netflix. And then I'm trying to catch up on Game of Thrones. I'm on season 5. No spoiler alerts, please. So it's a great platform for me to catch up on those things.
Yeah, like everybody else, I probably have 45 to 50 different devices all between the office and my home. Believe it or not, my primary device, I say that because a lot of the folks in our industry are really focused on the set-top boxes, but I happen to love my LG. I have a WebOS TV in my living room. Gets me Netflix. That's kind of my primary binging. I watch a lot of Netflix, but I do have a Roku and an Apple TV. And I think that they all have different uses and functions depending on what you're trying to do. So I think they all have a purpose.
What's interesting is that I think part of the mix is that not every app is on every platform, and so I think at some point in time, I think we're gonna solve that at UI being a cross-platform platform. We're trying to fix that, but we have to sort of cobble together a mishmash of things just to be able to get at everything that we need. Kimberly, you're mentioning Disney Now, and we had a chat earlier this week about your aggregating of 3 separate apps into one, and that seems to be a bit of a trend. There was a pretty interesting strategy behind that. I'd love to have you share with the audience what that was and how that's going.
Sure. So from our research, we've shown in a household with children, you have a lot of kids that will look at content across our networks, and you have co-viewing between kids in the same household. So it made sense for us to have a single experience rather than having people download 3 different apps and try to authenticate with them and discover the content. So by having them together, we've been out just barely over a month, but we already see that people are looking at content across all networks. It increases our ability to have great discoverability, recommendations, and really just creates a fuller experience for a household rather than having them jump from app to app. From a technology perspective, it's a lot easier for us to manage one app rather than 3 and trying to keep them updated and things like that. So it's just a little bit, makes a lot more sense for us from an operational perspective as well.
And there was the point that you made to me earlier this week, which I thought was also pretty fascinating, is really reducing churn. So as the audience grows up, literally,
right.
Having them have to jump to another app is a bit of a challenge. And I don't know if that's specific to Disney, but I would imagine that's true overall.
Yeah, well, with the kids market, I mean, we have Disney Junior, which is 2 to kind of into 6, and then Channel and XD that are 6 to 11, sometimes into 14. But we basically lose our audience. Our audience outgrows us every few years, and that's not something you see with networks targeted or content targeted to 18 and older. So it really helped us to keep kids in the experience and start, as we start seeing them look at older content, we can start making those recommendations to them. And it really, from a recommendation side too, it's a lot smarter. So it's not just network specific or what we think the stereotypical demographic is. We can really look at, hey, you might like Star Wars and you might like unicorns. And so we can then give you a recommendation based on that.
Excellent point. So, Tom, let's switch over to you and start talking about the fragmentation challenge.
Sure.
Obviously, you guys develop a lot on Roku. It's too bad that Ted's not there.
Yep.
But you also develop on other platforms as well. I love to, because you deal with a lot of brands yourself, you have a different lens on things. Where do you see the fragmentation going? Is it going to be narrowing down? Is it growing? How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a tough question. We think we see things. I mean, there's a lot of aggregation going on the content side. Roku's obviously been doing a great job with bringing a lot of content together, making the app, the user interface be more of an app location. But yeah, I mean, it's still very fragmented. On the smart TV side, we've seen a lot more unification from an HTML5 perspective. That's really becoming the core, the building blocks for the smart TV apps. Roku's in its own bucket. Fire TV is kind of in its own bucket right now. Apple TV is in its own bucket. So we're doing things on the back end to kind of try to unify a lot of that. Certainly from the front end, from a user interface perspective, we're making those apps, like a single app on all those platforms, very similar. Almost to the point where you wouldn't be able to tell which platform you're looking at. But they're each doing their own, and there's unique strategies in place for each platform to do that. I mean, a lot of them don't want to. I think fragmentation helps some of those players in the marketplace. So it's really up to us to try to figure out how to unify it from a technology point of view.
Excellent, and thank you. Welcome, Ted.
Yes, sorry I'm late. I was hoping to avoid all the tough questions. But I'm here. Good to be here. Thanks.
We're just getting into it. We're just kind of going one-on-one, and then we'll get into the deeper panel discussion. So, Karina, I think your organization has been focusing on reach pretty aggressively, going to quite a few platforms fairly quickly. And there's a debate in the industry around, should an app feel like a Roku app or feel like an Apple app, or should it feel like brand X app across the board? What's your view on that? What is it that you're trying to achieve?
Well, we're trying to do a lot of things, and some of them compete with each other. So on the one hand, we want to be efficient. We need our products to scale. We want our features to scale. But not every device is the same, and obviously, so right now, we obviously use You.i to help us sort of scale, our apps across multiple devices, but we continue to build sort of unique features into specific platforms. So for example, connected devices are really great for watching video, but there's not much else you can do on them. So where we need to build, for example, for our show on TBS called Snoop Dogg Presents The Joker's Wild, we built an interactive game where you could play along The Joker's Wild. You can't play The Joker's Wild on Roku. That's in our mobile app. It's not on an Apple TV or an Amazon Fire. So we are, building specific features into specific apps that are unique to the capabilities of those products, and where there is the opportunity for some ubiquity, that's where we build sort of enterprise features.
Fantastic. Now, Ted, you even jumped right in the fire, I think a month in from Roku, and
right.
Literally in this panel as well. I mean, obviously Roku went public. There's no surprise there. I was at the Roku workshop, and your CEO was there talking in nomenclature that's very MVPD-like channels, and you've launched your own app. Share with us kind of where Roku is at, and what is Roku as a company now? We used to think of it as the streamer box, but I think the vision is much grander than that.
Sure. So I can give you my perspective after a whole 35 days on the job. But in my estimation, Roku's kind of always been the little engine that could, and just started out as a very specific hardware company that grew up out of Netflix many years ago, and just continue to grow and thrive despite competing in some ways against the largest companies on the planet, Apple, Amazon, and Google. And you can really see the company's culture is really transitioning from that scrappy little hardware-based startup many years ago to a full-fledged media company in spirit and in personality and culture. So that's been very exciting. Half of the company is new within the last 2 years. It's doubled in size. And really a shift from a hardware-based ecosystem to what we call a platform-based ecosystem, and deriving revenue more from services and content versus from our hardware sales. And really now that's the core focus of the company. We're embedded in televisions, embedded in hardware players, embedded in MVPD boxes, and really looking to monetize the user through services. So it's been a kind of a fun evolution of the company, an exciting time, and hopefully the trend continues.
It's amazing watching Roku's progress over the last 8 years. I mean, we've been working very closely together for a long time. We actually were just in the right place at the right time. Roku had maybe 4 or 5 channels in a wall-gardened. There was no channel store back then, but we were just fortunate enough to have a partner that wanted to get on the platform, so we were able to get in there and start working on that. And it's incredible to see where the company has come since those early days.
That's great. It's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think one of the strengths of Roku has been its sort of neutral perspective and kind of welcoming all content providers, kind of regardless of strategy or business, and really trying to work with everyone. I think that's why you buy a Roku, because it has all the apps that you want to use, save one Apple app. But really everyone else we're happy to work with and have continued that spirit ever since the beginning of the company, and that's still very much the case. So open for business to big and small and all business models alike, and hopefully that's a differentiator for us going forward.
Now, the name Netflix has come up a number of times, and literally the other day I went and looked at their platform page to get a sense, for the scope and the range and the reach of the platforms, and I counted about 30 plus platforms, including DVD players and any piece of glass with moving pictures on it. It looks like Netflix is there. It's crazy reach. They have thousands of engineers to be able to achieve that. I like to start unraveling that and getting a sense for priority. How do you guys decide where do you launch first, where do you launch second? How do you phase that out, and how do you make those decisions? Maybe we'll start with you, Karina.
That's a good question. I mean, our priorities this year have really just been about being, everywhere, and we're, now close to achieving that goal with the addition of smart TVs later this year, but we are on all the major platforms. But from here, for us, it's much more about seeing where we're looking at the data and seeing where we're getting adoption. It's also about acquiring user data and being able to leverage that data for monetization, for improved services, for personalization, which you talked a little bit about. So wherever we have partners that allow us to capture data, and wherever we're able to use that data effectively is where we make choices. Roku's actually been a great example of a partner where in less than 4 months we had 1 million downloads on Roku, and that's largely because Roku worked really well with us to help us get there. And we're seeing much longer session times on Roku. So we're going to continue, for example, to invest in Roku because the data is telling us that our consumer really likes to find us there. So it's a little bit of an iterative process for us. Next year, I think a big part of it is going to be about enhancing the video experience itself. Right now, we're a very linear product, so we're great for watching linear TV in an app. But we don't toggle elegantly between linear content and short-form digital content. So that's something that we're looking to next year to make our products more sticky. We want lots of different types of content. So not just being able to deliver a television experience, but to deliver a video viewing experience to a particular customer. And knowing about that customer is where our priority lies. And so we're building out a CRM to help us do that as well.
How about yourself, Kimberly, on Disney Now?
So with Disney Now, we targeted our largest platforms first. So we launched it on Roku, iOS devices, Apple TV, and Android. And then are targeting Android TV, Fire TV, and web later in the year. And it was really, like, we didn't have enough engineering to do everything at once, so we really had to prioritize what we wanted to do to get a great experience. And it goes back to what you were just saying, that we want to have a very good experience, an immersive experience. But I think it kind of goes back to early days when new devices started coming out. There was a point where I think everyone kind of felt like they had to be on everything, and some devices didn't work out. I mean, I did a sprint to get on Google TV when I was at Turner, and that didn't go anywhere. So I think companies started being a lot more selective of where do I invest my money, and I feel like media in general is a little bit more cautious now of like, is this going to be a thing or is it not going to be a thing? And I think TVs, the smart TVs get a little bit late in getting a lot of these apps because it's just more difficult to develop for them, and everyone's trying to figure out if they're going to be a true thing, if people are going to use them or keep using connected devices. But from our perspective, we want to be everywhere our kids are, so we'll keep growing our platforms as well.
And to tweak the question a little bit for Tom and Ted. One of the pieces of advice that I provide to people is not just to look at the absolute numbers. Those are easy to get. There's X million of these, X million of those. It's also how willing the platform itself is willing to partner with the brand to put together a launch plan and really feature them, get them in front of in front of people's eyeballs to really discover that content. Discovery is yet another topic. So Tom and Ted, throwing that out to you guys in terms of what you're seeing platforms do well to really help the brands launch properly.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think one of the things that we always consider when we're talking to a publisher and where they want to distribute is, first of all, what is the service? What are the monetization strategies there? And are there any restrictions around that based on the OEM, based on the platform? And so, fortunately, Roku's been an incredible partner for us and for all of our co-partners, publishers that we work with in terms of how we integrate or execute on their monetization strategy, whether it's ad serving or subscription or transactional. So, but it is definitely a huge consideration. I mean, we dealt with a lot of friction in the early days when we were looking, because to your point, which is so true, it's like, circa 2011, everybody just wanted to be everywhere. It didn't matter. Just get me on any platform that could support an app, just get me there. And that's not the strategy that people have today. It's costly. What's the ROI on those platforms? And, the OEM restrictions tend to be more so on other platforms. Maybe there's restrictions on SDKs and things that we can use to make that experience work. And so that's a huge, huge factor.
And Ted, from your point of view, in terms of Roku adjusting and helping folks launch, I don't know if you have anything to add to that in terms of what you're doing there.
Yeah, we have a kind of a two-pronged plan of attack. We're one on the technical side. We're really trying to devote as many resources as possible to facilitate that, because we know we're a little bit different. We're not an HTML5 shop, so we have a little bit of a different programming language that folks have to use to get on the platform. So we have certain competencies in that internally. We have experts that we work externally with as well, and we have a team dedicated to facilitating that process for folks, because we know it's a little bit different, but we think we've got it down to hopefully something that's reasonable to manage. So on the technical side, yes, but also kind of post-app launch, we're really trying to do a lot around discovery and a lot around targeting. So we have a 100-person team located in New York that specializes in advertising on the Roku platform. And we believe that, and it's biased, but that we're kind of light years ahead of anyone else in the OTT targeted advertising space. We get great user data on our customers via credit cards and other data, and we're able to target them very, very accurately in terms of what we think they want to watch. So that kind of, as it turns to discovery, working with our channel partners in getting their app and their content in front of an audience that hasn't used it but we think would be ripe to use it. So working with brands and channels in terms of audience discovery is a huge initiative of us. We have the inventory, we have the data, they have a need to get to the audience, and so we think it's a really good situation to just build that awareness, because we have 5,000 channels, and so for a user it's really hard to navigate through that, and we feel like with our data we can help the user do that.
All right, so now we're going to enter into the debate and arm wrestling section of the panel. We've been talking to clients all over the world, and obviously all your brands are international as well. We're seeing smart TVs in particular really taking off, and certainly the brands that are talking to us or that we're working with directly are much hotter on getting onto smart TVs, the Samsung Tizens and LG WebOS and so on. But the customers in North America seem to be a little bit more apprehensive. Do we believe the wave is coming here and it's just a question of time? Is the market different? Why are we being so apprehensive on the smart TV side? Or maybe we aren't. So up for grabs, let's start debating. Who's got that one?
Let me take a stab at it. It's a tough question, and I don't really have a clear answer to it. The only thing that I can say is that in the beginning, I keep saying in the beginning, this is like in the early days, a couple years ago, smart TVs from a technology perspective have been somewhat behind the eight ball, I believe. It's been hard to do what we've been able to do on other platforms on smart TVs. Just from a hardware perspective, some of the hardware just doesn't allow us to do a whole lot. It's very restrictive. So I think that that has something to do with it. I just feel like that is probably propagated into this idea that the smart TVs aren't putting a lot of energy and effort. It's more of an experiment. This idea of how much money they're investing in the App Store and the entire. By the way, it's not just the App Store. It's also the entire process that it takes to get an app approved. And there's an entire team on the OEM requires an entire team to be able to go through this whole exercise of taking these apps and looking through all the code and making sure everything is working properly and it's up to their spec, and then they can release it. There's a lot of investment that is required from the OEMs to participate in that. And I think that just some of the other manufacturers have just it's been kind of somewhat in an experimental mode, and not like what we're seeing today, where we're seeing a lot more. To your point, we're seeing a lot more movement in that direction, and they're supporting it more, and these platforms are becoming more powerful. So I do think that is just going to change, but I think that that's part of the lag. Is that traditionally they just weren't able to do some of the things that they're able to do today, and I think that that's propagated back to the publishers, and they're not seeing they weren't expecting that they would see the ROI on it that they're seeing on the other platforms.
I mean, and you guys might have different data, but the data that I've seen is that there are 2 times as many connected televisions or smart TVs as there are connected devices. In other words, for every TV that has a Roku, Apple, or Amazon Fire connected to it, there is one that doesn't. So that leaves a lot of televisions. I read that it's something like 300 million expected by the end of next year, smart televisions. So unless the rate of adoption of connected devices grows much faster than the rate of smart TV adoption, I think you're going to have a lot of TVs that we want to be on that don't have a Roku attached to them. Now, whether that's a second or third TV or fourth TV in the home, or it's a bunch of hotels or college campuses, I'm not the expert, but we know we want to be on those TVs. So right now our approach, because it is very kind of touch and go and expensive to develop for all of these TVs, we're looking at the gap, the extra 50% of televisions out there that can be connected as an opportunity for casting. And so we're going to be announcing something in a few weeks where we're really looking at the TV as well. If you have our app on your mobile device, can we unlock the experience on a smart TV vis-a-vis a cast, where we know we see once a user or a consumer casts, they're spending 2 to 3x the minutes with our content than they would on a smaller screen. So to us, we're not just going to wait and see. We're going to aggressively pursue the smart TV market. We're going to be cautious, but we're not just going to kind of wait it out, because there's a lot of TVs out there.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I used to run digital for 20th Century Fox, and back in the day we used to advise our partners not to go on smart TVs because we wouldn't see the adoption, we wouldn't see the usage, we wouldn't see the revenue being driven off those platforms. They were fragmented. The user experience, to be honest, was not great versus other connected devices. So our recommendation was just pass on those, hit these handful of devices, and that's your biggest ROI. Now I think that's changing, where the UI is getting better and the opportunities out there. You talked about scale. I totally agree with that. That connected TV is going to blossom, and that's an area as a content provider that you need to be on. And so, as a strategic decision, a couple years ago, we decided to embed the OS into television. So now it's publicly released as part of our S1 that 1 out of every 5 TVs that are made have a Roku OS embedded, which for us I think was a great move for a lot of reasons, but also from a content aggregation standpoint, having a Roku app gets you into a significant portion of that connected TV environment where you don't have to have a special built app for each individual brand of TV. So huge growing market for us. I agree with you that it makes a lot of sense now to do it. It's a little bit of a different animal where an app on Roku, because we go to this connected TV platform, you have to design it a little bit differently because they just don't have the horsepower of a $200 Apple TV box. But we think now that the scale and the opportunity is certainly there.
I would say from our perspective at Disney, we definitely want to be on those platforms. From my personal experience, I think I've been in conversations with various manufacturers for maybe 7 years now. So it's to your point of, they're hardware manufacturers. They haven't had a lot of experience with the user experience. So if you ever have to go to your TV menu and figure out how to change the audio, it's not easy. And they've had ideas of how to get things done. They maybe have chosen to use a code that it's not something we have in-house or can easily get. Then there's a lot of starts and stops that have happened over the years. So I think now it's finally to a point to where, yes, they can handle the software. Yes, there's an approach to user experience. They've done partnerships like with Roku to improve that user experience. So I think now it's finally getting to that point to where we can develop for that and people can figure out how to use it.
And then we just need to make it so that people know that there's actually an app store there that you can actually go into something and download an app, because for a long time, I mean, yes, they're connected, and yes, you can download apps, but how do you get to it? I have no idea. I've got this remote in front of me that has 55 different buttons on it, and there's a thing in the middle that I push, and that exposes. It's just not. It wasn't designed in the way that it is. I think, like I said, as everybody's saying, it's getting better, but it wasn't. People were buying them, so yes, it's true that there are 25 million units in the U.S. of this particular smart TV, but 22% of those folks are actually aware of the fact that there's an app store in there, and they're connecting and they're getting their downloaded apps. So, but that's all getting better.
But I think it comes back to what you're used to as well, too. So if I'm used to my Apple TV, if I'm used to my Roku, I buy a brand new fancy TV and it's internet enabled and has an app store, but I know my Apple TV or I know my Roku, people connect those to them and they're not gonna, it's that learning curve, and a lot of people don't want to jump into that, or the apps that you want are not available yet. So then you're switching between devices all the time, so I might as well just stay with what I had.
Right, which is great about what Roku's doing. Is that you're in it, like you turn on the TV, you're in the OS.
Yep,
right?
same experience, exactly.
So you're not having to navigate for an app store that's obscured by some layer of interface. You're basically in it, and you can just get to what you want right there. So.
But what we're doing to solve for exactly the point that you just made, where if in the instance that you buy that new TV and it's going in your den or that room where you don't have the Roku, we're enabling the cast. So if you're on your Android phone and we detect that you have a Samsung Tizen in the room, we will let you cast from your TBS app on your Android to that television without having to develop a native app for the Tizen. So you'll be able to have the full experience.
And I think there's a strategy that kind of goes beyond that. I don't know if you can sort of talk to that, but
that's
as a
what we'll be
discovery.
announcing in a few weeks.
All right.
But it's very close to what I just told you. But look, I mean, what we've seen since we've really gone heavy into sort of merchandising casting capabilities in our apps is that 20% of all mobile views result in a cast. And as I said, our casts are the session time is 2 to 3x what they are on a mobile device. So anything we can do to get that consumer onto that larger screen to stay longer, that's what we're going to do. And whatever it takes to accelerate, the rate at which we can get onto that larger TV, which means that we're not going to necessarily go out the gate and develop an app for Samsung and LG and everybody in the market. We're going to start with casting and.
So watch that announcement. I think it'll be very interesting. Now, we talked quite a bit about smart TVs. How many folks here still have a traditional set-top box with a coax built into it? I mean, I have one. It doesn't work, but wow, you guys are really, really advanced. It would shock you to see, when the numbers, when you actually look at the numbers of how many new set-top boxes are still shipped every year. It's in the couple 100 million. I mean, it's, whether it was PVR or 4K or whatever, the numbers are staggering. And I'm wondering how you guys are looking at that. either as a destination for an actual app, like the apps that you guys are building or working on, or as a hybrid where you're able to bring somebody to extra content while they're watching a linear channel. They're watching the game and they can get more background on a player or whatever. Are you guys exploring those kinds of deployments on more traditional set-top boxes and maybe looking at it from a hybrid point of view? Tough question.
But I'd say when we launched Disney Now, one of the great things that we did in partnership with Comcast for the X1 platform, they have now a Disney Now banner. So we still have the 3 individual linear networks, but when you go to Disney Now or you speak Disney Now into the remote, it'll bring up a Disney Now banner, and then when you go into it, all of the content from Disney channels will be there. So that's kind of a way to tie that linear experience to what you see in the apps. And then from a kid's perspective, and we're definitely looking at more, this is not directly, but more interactive experiences where you can interact with linear. So we just did a live play event with our Descendants 2 franchise Sunday night, where the kids have polls, things like that, and it would show up, the poll results, things like that. And I mean, that drew our highest ratings from a live play experience. Descendants 2's been out a while, so it's in our sustain mode. And it was our highest download since we launched Disney Now 6 weeks ago. So it was great to have that interactive experience and really cater to an avid fan of one of our franchises.
Any other thoughts on that set-top box world? I know certainly Roku has just announced a hybrid device with over-the-air integration and all of that kind of stuff. So certainly Roku's looked at eyeing perhaps replacing the traditional set-top boxes with Roku boxes and working with Sky and other operators like that.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. We're looking to partner with MVPDs or existing providers to have a Roku replacement for a set-top box. We've got a couple partnerships announced, and that's a large focus of ours as well. And then on the opposite side, if to the extent that they want to keep their traditional MVPD ecosystem look and feel and distribute that over the top, obviously we have partnerships with DirecTV Now and Sling and all the other providers that are moving over the top that way to replicate that same look and feel on an over-the-top environment. So two strategies. I think we're open to either, and it's really kind of based on where that MVPD or where that incumbent in the direction that they want to go.
All right, let's switch gears and talk social. I think in the description for the panel, we promised that we would really cover as much as possible the topic of reach and how to get to everybody that's a potential consumer of the content. We talked a lot about platforms. Social is definitely part of it. Facebook is one of the sponsors of the conference. Twitter, Snap, everybody's got to play in that. It's a distribution channel. Some people look at it as potential monetization. Others look at it as marketing. So I'd like to at least touch on that topic with the few minutes that we have left and really break it down into, is it marketing? Is it distribution? Is it a competitor? I mean, Facebook has Facebook TV and an app that is rolling out on platforms. Where do we stand?
Well, we look at it, we make money on those platforms. We look at it as incremental inventory that comes with, the added benefit of distribution and audience development. So yeah, it's an audience development vehicle, and it is also a revenue vehicle for us. And we have relationships with all the platforms to enable us either to sell or make, rev shares or whatever it is to enable us to succeed on those platforms. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we'll have another announcement next week on something for Snapchat, for example. So anyway, but I'm a firm believer that you have to be where your audience is, and so, when Facebook announced they have a watch tab, and that they were going to create this environment for shows, we put out about 4 shows, within a couple months. Now, those shows do a lot of heavy lifting for us in terms of driving tune-in. They were all shows tied to linear IP. They weren't just original programming that we made for Facebook. They were meant to accrue value to our brand and to our shows and to drive audiences into places where we monetize those audiences. So that's how we see it.
For the kids' audience, it's a little bit different because they're technically not supposed to be on social media, even though most of them are. So we technically target to the parents, but we use it very much in the same way. We'll put short form content up, really drive audience engagement through our platforms. A lot of our actors who play characters in our shows are very active on those platforms as well, so we definitely leverage that to drive people back to linear. And I see it as kind of part of the circle of how you keep engagement and keep people coming back is by using social. I think it's a great medium for us to use. And I don't think we should, people underestimated Netflix when they came out and said they were going to do originals. So, and look where they are. So I don't think we should underestimate Facebook and what their plans are.
This whole idea of discovery is a major challenge. And one of the things that we're trying to do, because we can't honestly rely. You need to have a huge marketing budget. Let's be honest to be able to. If you're a middle tier brand that just does not have, you've got great content, but you're just not a well-known household name. It's just hard to get bubbled up to the surface. So we're trying to solve that problem with with some of our technology and helping to connect these partners together that we're deploying on all these different platforms to possibly lean on one another for some visibility, some viewership. Social is just part of one part of the whole marketing strategy. It just needs to be done in coordination with a lot of other activity as well. But I do feel like we have a responsibility for those middle tier brands that are, again, great content, just not as well known, to help them. And whether it's also helping them create relationships with the OEMs to help them advertise on those particular platforms, which we do. But also, we're looking to take on some of this ourselves by building up a network of content partners to lean on one another and to get viewership. So,
just on the Facebook piece, because I went to listen to a panel right before this that had a number of best practices around making short form were enumerated, and reminded me Facebook right now is actually not a great place to watch video. It's just not. Most video is.
And they interrupt in the middle.
You're in your feed. Sound is off. They tell you upload the SRT file so the subtitles are there. If you're not using kinetic text, one of the best practices you use a lot of jump cuts in the first 12 seconds, so you have the schizophrenic looks. Use split screens. And if I brought that back to our production team, I would be in HR's office really quickly and schooled on how not to talk to storytellers. And so I think some of these platforms still have a long way to go in terms of building an environment that's actually rewarding for storytelling. That's actually a good user experience for something that's longer than 3 minutes. And that's not to say that they're not going to get there, but when your motivation is just sell more mid-roll because it has a higher CPM versus build a really great immersive place to watch beautiful content. I don't know, if you go to Facebook and you ask, you survey a bunch of their employees, which one do you think you're building? I doubt a lot of people would say, we really want to build a place where people can sit and watch wonderful video. So until they feel that way, I think they just have a little bit of a ways to go. That said, there's 2 billion people on Facebook, so we want to be there, but I don't know. That's my view on Facebook, at least.
And Facebook Live is a way to potentially, connect the audience to the cast members, the directors, those kinds of things. Are those things that you're seeing some success with, either yourself or what you've observed other people doing? Any of you, really?
Yeah, we do. We produce a ton of content. Behind the scenes, interviews with talent, live, We try to also produce a ton of short form that it feels like standalone content, so we're not always marketing at an audience, we're also programming to them. Even if at the end of the day we do flash a little tune in at them. So it definitely works. It's just you have to produce a lot of it, and and the results obviously across YouTube, Facebook, Insta, and Twitter vary significantly, and what the benchmarks are and what a measure of success is sometimes varies greatly, right? Like I hear people tell me all the time on my team, like 30% of the audience got past 10 seconds. What? How much does this thing cost to make? So we try to, I don't know about you, like it's a balance. So you have to know what success looks like for yourself, I guess. Yeah.
Right, well, we're about 10 minutes from the end. I wanted to make sure that we provided the audience the opportunity to ask questions. Obviously, we were just talking social, but before we're talking, set-top boxes and smart TVs, and hey, there are apps on DVD players, or at least Blu-ray players, believe it or not. So, questions on any of those topics. Obviously, it's rare to have such a incredible panel up here that you can ask questions of. So. Please shoot, and I'll repeat the question for the cameras, and we'll dig in. Yes?
Actually, there was another panel that similar to this, but that I think was recently canceled. But was supposed to talk about how do you judge success on social and these platforms. And like you just said, it probably looks different to everybody. But I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the question, just so I repeat it, you can deploy on lots of different platforms, whether it's hardware platforms or social. How do you measure success? How do you know whether you've made it or not? Anybody up?
Sure, I'll start. So the usual suspects. In the apps, we obviously look at churn and session time. Those are really important to us. We obviously have seasonal products, like a show. A show might run 8 to 10 weeks, so we see churn at the end of that 10 weeks if your show's over. I mean, the HBO phenomenon, right? Like, right after Game of Thrones is over, a lot of people stop subscribing. So we see that. So we do look for ways that we can retain those users, upsell them into other programming, and drive more minutes when they're in the app, and also MAUs, monthly active users. On social, because we produce a ton of video and we're essentially a video company, we do look at view through and completion rates. Those are really critical to us. There's always a debate about are fans important. I'm not really a big fan of fandom in the sense of how many people like your page, because at the end of the day, if the content's good, the algorithms will reward you. But we do look at that as well, because it is unfortunately a metric that helps assign some loyalty and affinity to your products. And then last but not least, obviously we look at engagement rates on social as well.
I agree with all those things. And I think a lot of it too is knowing where you are and where you want to be. So since we just launched a new product, I just had a conversation with my research person this morning of how many kids are aware of Disney Now, and it wasn't 100. And I was like, why don't all the kids know it? And she's like, no, it's a really good number, but it's you have to know where you were and where you want to be. And so as I talk numbers, we try to look historically too. I think authentication is a great example of authentication rates to get in. If you're above 40%, you're doing really well. And if you look at that, you have 90 to 100 million people, and less than 40% may even be aware of TV everywhere, and no less actually getting through the wall. So it's, this is a good number compared to what everyone else is doing in the industry, but is it where we want to be? No. So I think seeing that growth trend from where we have been to where we're going, and keeping those numbers relative.
Yeah, from our perspective, being on the technical side of things, and when we deploy like a huge brand, just for example, like NBC Sports, and they have all these amazing live sporting events, our measurement of success is just that we're not getting blown up with support emails and phone calls, that angry subscribers can't get access to their content. So that's on the bigger brands. That's generally what we use to measure success, because no one is having to look for or discover NBC Sports. You're kind of just getting there, you want to watch your show, and so now it's just making sure that that app experience and the quality of service is there. For our not so well-known but great brands that we work with, it's really about installs, being discovered, being installed, and having viewership, and seeing a slow trend of growing viewership. This stuff does not just happen overnight. For a new OTT service, it's a growing, and hopefully it's a positive rate of growth over a period of time for a service. So we look at those types of metrics, ultimately turning into ROI for the publishers, which would then enable them to want to expand to more platforms. So.
It's great. I agree with all of what the really smart folks have said. The only thing that I would add is just that our goal is to try and have our partners, OTT consumers, behave the same as they would behave in their traditional viewing of TV on a linear fashion. If you can get that sort of one-to-one replacement in terms of hours viewed or hours per user engaging with their experience, then we feel like that's going to be so much of a net positive, because then the things you can do in OTT like targeting and monetization are that much better. We're starting to see that in apps like Sling and DirecTV Now, where folks are using those just the same as they would be watching Comcast on traditional cable. And so I think that's a big step. And then we feel like once users understand it and use it as they would traditional TV, then that unlocks a large amount of value in increments over that.
Can I just add one more thing? We also obsess over our App Store ratings. I think those are so important. I read all of our customer reviews, especially the ones that give me 1 star. I'm obsessed with them, as a matter of fact. I wish I could email every single person back, especially the ones that say, tell the person who runs this thing she's a dickhead.
Can I quote you on that?
Yes.
I got that.
When people have a bad experience, it really it destroys me. So early in my career, I had an experience where I was running marketing for Evite and City Search, and customer service reported to me, and let me tell you, when you're sending an invite for your daughter's, 4th birthday, and somebody tells you they didn't get invited and it's because it got stuck in their spam folder and stuff like that, and then they email you how you ruined their child's birthday party. That was a very early time in my career to realize how important customer service is. So anyway, we obsess over our App Store ratings and those reviews, the comments that come with them.
Well, people are told to ignore the 1 star and the 5 star. The 5 stars like your mom and your grandma.
We actually have an entire product line dedicated solely to App Store reviews, where there's a product manager who focuses on it.
But it's a really good point, though. I mean, we focus very much on KPIs, metrics, things like that, but it's really what people are saying and how they feel, and that's where I work very, very closely with our research group. We have kids panels of how do they really feel? What is their experience? Is this something they want to use day in and day out? And that's really the most important thing. I mean, numbers are quantifiable, and it's easy to put on a spreadsheet and share everybody, but to get that sentiment, I think, is very, very important.
Twitter's been great for that too, for us, by the way. Great and not so great at times. But a lot of major issues have been bubbled up on Twitter. People are going, people are hashtagging this weird thing. What's going on? And so then we find out that there are issues, or giving us glowing reviews on something that we've put into market that we're really proud of. But that's been great for a real-time pulse of what's happening with our services. So
I think we can take one more question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Is TV everywhere a gateway to direct to consumer? And if so, what do you need to do from a product technology standpoint to make it that and move forward?
So I'll try to repeat the abbreviated version of that. Is TV everywhere a gateway to direct to consumer, in essence? Great question.
I think it depends on what service you're building. You could, TV everywhere is complicated already, so to add onto it can create user confusion. So I think it has to be handled very elegantly and very clear of what you're getting. So I think you're talking about if I have a TV subscription and pay extra for something.
HBO Now and HBO Go.
Versus. And I think it's just going to be very clear what you're getting. So I think in the HBO example, for that price, you get exactly what I would have had if I had paid for my subscription. But if it differs, then I think that's where you could run into issues of you get more with one service than another, and why. So it can get muddy and I think create a lot of confusion. But I think TV Everywhere has helped enable people to look at content more online, so it creates that habit. So, I think the question is, how will people want to get their content and pay for their content? So I think we've yet to see that.
All right, great question. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope it was very helpful. I want to thank the panel again for their wisdom and sharing it with the crowd today. Thank you.